Hey everybody, it's Andy on the mountain, and today we're going to be looking at the MSR Access 1. This is their one-person version. So this is going to be a video, kind of an overview and initial impressions of my first night sleeping in this tent. So let's get right into it. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the outside of this tent. So as far as ventilation goes, we have a vent on the head end and same with the foot end there. Also on each end, you do have guy lines, so you can kind of pull it out, which allows more ventilation in there. Same with the backside. We'll go ahead and show you that here. Now with this being a 4-season tent, which means it can withstand about 1 to 2 feet of snow on top of it, but also withstand heavy winds. This has more of a structured pole system. We'll show you that in a second once I take that off. And as far as guy lines go on the outside, there is plenty of guy lines. We have one here, there. I mean, here. Same with on the backside too. And the tent does come with these the MSR's guy line tension system. If you got heavy winds, you can really guy it down with your poles. Over there I'm using my split board to guy out the one side. Now for the vestibule here, we just have one vestibule on the outside because it's the one-person version. The two-person version, from what I looked at on their website, has another vestibule on the other side, so each person can have their own vestibule. Now one thing I really like doing in the wintertime with vestibules is digging out the vestibule, so I can kind of sit in my tent. Also, I have my backpack in there and food. I'm able to store more items because this being a one-person tent, it's pretty small. All right, so I'm going to show you guys the pole system here. So you can see this tent is really similar to the MSR Hubba 1 or the Hubba, which I've had previously. I've reviewed that probably in 2016 or 17, which is a fantastic tent. But this tent is really similar to the Hubba as far as the poles go, except it does have a pole that extends on both sides just to make it a little bit more rigid for the snow loads. Now you can see as far as ventilation goes, this is all the tent has. That's it. So most winter tents just don't have good ventilation because what you're trying to do is keep the warmth inside. So we'll go into that in a second here when I kind of tell you guys about my initial impressions on how the tent worked last night. But yeah, it's a single pole design. None of these poles are separate. It's all one design. So it's really really intuitive and pretty easy to put together, especially if you've put together, your typical summertime tent. They all kind of have that pole system that goes together. So again, this tent is really easy to put together with gloves on. Just little clips here, and super easy to go on. So the poles, they are made by Easton. Easton makes a lot of tent poles called their Cyclone poles. They almost look like carbon fiber, but I don't think they're actually carbon fiber. They're called composite, which doesn't sound like carbon fiber to me. But I have broken previous carbon fiber tent poles, and they just don't seem to be as strong like the MSR Hubba 1, really old one. I broke the poles. Also, the door, of course, can be rolled back. So this is a reason why I really love digging out the vestibule in the wintertime, because you can still sit up in your tent and be outside as well and drink your cup of tea. Last night it was snowing pretty hard, so I had the vestibule open like this, and I was able to cook dinner right here and keep most of the snow out. You could potentially cook in the vestibule with it closed, but with the stove that I'm using, the MSR Whisperlight, it's a liquid fueled stove. The flame in the beginning of it is actually pretty high, so I didn't want to take chances and melt a hole in the vestibule. The way the structure is, it makes it really large inside, as you can see. We'll show you guys a couple clips of last night. And as far as pockets go, you just have one at the head, one at the foot, and then there are some like little tie-out points on the ceiling, which you can see. I kind of made a little line where I had my hat up there last night, sunglasses, gloves, just things drying. But it's pretty spacious on the inside. Pretty simple. I did notice with the sleeping pad here, one where you inflate, my head and feet do tend to hit the sides when I'm sleeping, and I'm about 5'11", so I think if you're over 6 feet high, your feet and head definitely are going to hit the ends, especially with the inflatable sleeping pad. When I had it at my house originally setting it up, I just had the foam pad here, and I had way more space. I think it's just because this is up a little bit higher, and the edges there kind of start closing in and get a little bit smaller compared to the bottom side where it's way bigger. Okay, so first night, initial impressions of this tent. First off, I was very impressed by how warm I was staying inside the tent. So it was probably maybe 10 to 15 degrees last night, Fahrenheit, outside of the tent. Inside of the tent, when I was eating dinner, I had a thermometer in there, and the thermometer read 40 degrees. But I stayed really warm last night and was kind of impressed by how much this tent keeps the warmth inside of it. So keeping the warmth inside of it is kind of a double-edged sword, because with the temperature really cold outside and the warmth on the inside, that's going to produce condensation. That's just inevitable. It's going to happen. So the rain fly, or we can call it a snow fly, had lots of condensation on the inside this morning. Plus the internal fabric was also pretty damp. And I just think that's one thing that's just going to happen in the wintertime with yourself breathing. You're warm, it's going to produce condensation. There's no way around that unless you just kind of maybe sleep under a tarp. Another thing that I really liked about this tent is how roomy it is on the inside. I've seen previous one-person tents, and a lot of them don't have a lot of space inside because it's just small. They're trying to reduce weight, but this thing has so much space on the inside. I'm blown away. I was actually doing some yoga stretches on the inside last night. I didn't have my my inflatable pad inflated because it just takes up a little bit more space, and I can move around a little bit easier on the foam pad while I'm hanging out. But I was just blown away by how spacious it was. So another thing about this tent that I really liked is the weight of it. I think it's in the upper 3-pound range, which for a 4-season tent, I think it's actually pretty nice. So there's a compromise of lightweight versus heavy. So the lighter the tent, the less durable it is going to be. So this is kind of an in-between tent. This isn't a tent you're going to take up in really high altitudes like Alaska, Aconcagua. This is not the proper tent for you. This tent is very lightweight, like I said, under 4 pounds, but this is kind of a good tent to be down in the valley right below tree line, maybe right at tree line. But camping up on ridges and stuff like that, I don't think this is the proper tent for that. So most of the winter camping I do, like 99% of the time, I'm pretty much down in the valley, in the trees, right at tree line. This seemed perfect for that. So there's other tents out there that are great, like they're going to be 8 pounds, which you can split up between 2 people, and that's perfect. But if you're looking to go solo, you're a split boarder such as myself, snowshoer, backcountry skier, and you just want something kind of comfortable but not too heavy, this is a great tent for you. I've also slept in multiple 4-season tents before, such as the Black Diamond First Light. It's a great tent, but I don't like how there's not a vestibule on the tent. You can buy it separately. So I find having a vestibule is really nice, especially in a small space, because you can kind of keep your stuff organized. Okay, so let's go into one other pro that I found about this tent is actually the color. I was setting it up in the dark last night, and I turned on my little lantern here on the inside and put the rain fly or the snow fly over it, and the color it gave off was so comforting. It's kind of like obviously orange, but it just kind of reminds me of like a warm fire. Just inside, it's like, ooh, it's nice and warm in there and cozy. So it's just kind of funny how the color can play a big role in the coziness. Say you had to stay in here for 2 days because it was really stormy out before you could go send your mission. This would be a great tent to just hang out in. I mean, yeah, it's a one-person tent. You only have so much room, but the color is really comforting, and that's one thing I like about that. And okay, so let's go with the cons of this tent. Well, to be honest, I don't really have any cons. If I were to think of one thing, I would say there's lots of condensation on the inside, but there was a lot of moisture in the air last night. Humidity was high because it's snowing, so I don't think you can get away from moisture unless, you know, maybe if I kept this door wide open while it snowed. But yeah, it's fine. You know, my sleeping bag maybe got a little damp at the toe box, maybe on the sides from rubbing against the side of the tent, but I had it on my split board over there in the sun to dry out. All right, guys, well, if you have any other questions, go ahead and comment below, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the review of the MSR Access 1.